The National Desk, America's News, now.
Preparing for Francine. Louisiana bracing for a hurricane, when the storm will hit and how strong it could be when it makes landfall.
Can he remain disciplined and go after Kamala Harris at a policy level rather than a personal level?
A heavy task at hand for both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris as they meet face-to-face for a historic one-on-one debate. What each candidate has to do tonight to walk away a winner. And a closer look at new research around CTE, the troubling brain disease associated with football and other high-impact sports. Could there be a major breakthrough on the horizon for earlier detection? This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David, and right now we are likely just hours away from a hurricane slamming right into Louisiana. The National Hurricane Center forecasting Tropical Storm Francine to become a Cat 1 hurricane later tonight or into early morning, with the possibility of making landfall in Louisiana later in the day as a Category 2 storm with winds up to 110 miles per hour. There is a storm surge warning right now in effect in Louisiana from Cameron to Port Fortune, with the threat of life-threatening surges along the Gulf Coast. Peak storm surge could be from 5 to 10 feet above ground level. Residents in the warning area, they are told to follow advice, including evacuation orders given by local officials. The National Weather Service says up to 1 foot of rain is possible in Louisiana tonight into tomorrow, with more to come as the storm passes north, bringing a high chance of flash flooding over the next 5 days. The surrounding areas all the way north to St. Louis are also expected to get at least 2 to 4 inches of rain in that same time. And right now we are less than 3 hours away from the highly anticipated debate between VP Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. The stakes are high as many question whether this will be a debate of personality or real substance. National correspondent Matt Gelka, he is live in Philadelphia for us with a look at what we can expect. Matt?
Yeah, Amir, big day, big night ahead, obviously. And really, this is probably the only time we're going to see both candidates share the stage together and be face-to-face. No other debate is scheduled right now. So what does that mean for voters? Well, it could be the closing argument. We're just 8 weeks to go before the election.
The stage is set in Philadelphia. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris in what could be their only debate in front of voters. It's somewhat uncharted territory, with Harris still introducing herself to casual voters who might not have paid attention to her term as vice president, while also making her closing pitch 2 months before November.
Kamala Harris, as people will see tonight, is for you. She's for the American people. Donald Trump is only for himself.
For Trump, it's his second general election debate this year, and his second opponent. The first debate against President Joe Biden swirled with questions about Biden's age and ability. Now, Trump's the older candidate on the attack against the younger Harris, while still hoping to tie her to the Biden administration.
Life is 20% more expensive right now for people than it was when Kamala Harris and Joe Biden took office. And you go back to Donald Trump's days in office. When he left the White House, 1.4% was the inflation rate.
Harris said in a radio interview earlier this week she's prepared for Trump's attacks and expects the former president to lie.
He plays from this really old and tired playbook, right, where there's no floor for him in terms of how low he will go.
The vice president saw a summer surge in the polls when she went to the top of the ticket, but it's a neck-and-neck race now with Trump.
No one really knows who Kamala Harris is and what her policies are. This election is not so much about Democrats and Republicans as it is about people who believe in America, believe in our founding principles.
for us. Well, a school shooting suspect now in custody in Omaha, Nebraska at Northwest High School. One 15-year-old was shot and is now hospitalized in critical condition. Authorities saying it appears this was an isolated incident between two students and there was no threat to the larger community. The school was placed on lockdown for about an hour and a half before students were released to go home. Meantime, most students in Georgia's Barrow County were back in school today, 6 days after 4 people were killed in a shooting at Appalachia High School. That school, ravaged by gunfire, still does not have a return date. The superintendent said there would be extra security and counseling available for all of the students. And in Kentucky, several school districts in the southeast are closed for a second day as a manhunt for a suspected highway shooter continues. 32-year-old Joseph Couch is accused of shooting and injuring 5 people on Interstate 75 on Saturday. Authorities say Couch sent text messages shortly before the attack saying he would, quote, kill a lot of people and then kill himself. And today, Tyreek Hill's football agent, Drew Rosenhaus, calling for the officers who arrested the Miami Dolphins wide receiver on Sunday to be fired after body cam footage appeared to show officers instigating an otherwise peaceful interaction with the player. Rosenhaus also said legal action was being considered.
Tyreek has his attorneys involved that are looking at this to see if that is appropriate. This is something that potentially should merit litigation.
One Miami-Dade officer has been placed on administrative leave, though the officer's attorneys have called for his immediate reinstatement. Speaker Mike Johnson's attempt to fund the government passed its first hurdle today in a narrow 209 to 206 vote. 2 Republicans opposed to any continuing resolutions joined all Democrats in voting the measure down. One sticking point on the bill is added legislation that requires proof of citizenship before registering to vote. The CR will get a final vote tomorrow before heading to the Senate, where more opposition by Democrats is expected.
I am in this to win this. I believe, as I just told you, this is a conviction I feel deep in my heart. I've been a co-sponsor of the SAVE Act from the beginning, and I think it's something we must do.
Republicans are trying to drive us into a government shutdown that will hurt everyday Americans because they want to jam Trump's Project 2025 agenda down the throats of the American people.
And Delta Airlines is trying to determine tonight how 2 planes collided this morning, knocking one of the plane's tails right off. It happened on the tarmac at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. The FAA saying the wingtip of a Delta plane hit the tail of an Endeavor airplane. An airport spokesperson said there were no reported injuries. Passengers were placed on alternate flights as an investigation continues tonight. Machinists working at Boeing, meantime, we are hearing that they are likely to strike by the end of the week. Union members say they are still not happy with a new tentative deal between Boeing and the union. The National Desk's Denise Whitaker reports from Boeing's Everett plant.
There's a new contract offer on the table for Boeing machinists that both the company and the union suggest approving, but workers are already marching in solidarity against it. Take a look at the photos and video shared with KOMO of the workers using their break times to voice their discontent.
We're still prioritizing what we have to do. We're still within compliance. We're just making a lot more noise on our break time, on our time. And I mean, we're all together on it.
Bottom line, it's absolutely unacceptable. Everything from, I mean, second, third year, they want to do a 4% gross wage increase. That's inflation. That's what the inflation rate's at.
Whether they've been with the company 3 years or 37, union members tell me they're among the lowest paid in their industry.
If they can pay a CEO $33 million a year, is that the best they can really do? You know, Tom Brady, for example, he wanted to see growth in his team. He always took a pay cut.
In a recorded message to union members, Boeing's commercial airplanes president made a promise that the next new airplane would be built in the Puget Sound region.
This would go along with our other flagship models, meaning job security for generations to come. It's a big commitment to you and to our community.
We need to hold strong And that message was clear last month when 99.9% of the people voted to strike sanction. That speaks volume.
This new contract offer, by the way, is more than 300 pages long. Union members tell me while they try to digest that here in the next couple of days, they plan to continue showing just how much they are dissatisfied with it.
Well, coming up, how much progress has been made on a major fire in California that's forced thousands of people to evacuate. Then the new steps researchers have taken to be able to diagnose the devastating brain disorder CTE far earlier. And later, the changes happening in California to make home insurance much more affordable. We'll be right back. Right now, more than 5,000 people in Southern California have been forced to evacuate because of a large fire that's threatening 65,000 buildings. The National Guard has been called in to help control the fire, which is on steep and rugged terrain, making it very difficult to put out. The blaze is up to 5% contained. It's one of several large fires burning in that state, along with Nevada and Oregon. And tonight, Secretary Antony Blinken calling on Israeli Defense Forces to make, quote, fundamental changes to operations after the killing of a U.S. citizen. He called it unprovoked and unjustified. The sharp criticism coming after an IDF investigation determined it was highly likely an American peace activist, Aishanur Aigi, was killed during a protest and hit unintentionally by Israeli gunfire. Israel saying the fire was in fact aimed at a violent, possibly armed protester, but humanitarian organizations behind the protest say the demonstration was peaceful. Tonight, the family of that 26-year-old rejecting Israel's claims of the shots being unintentional, calling the country's investigation, quote, wholly inadequate. Aigi is the second American to be killed by IDF forces in recent years. Palestinian-American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, she was fatally shot in the West Bank in 2022 while reporting. Meantime, tonight, the UN's top chief condemning IDF airstrikes in an Israeli designated safe zone in Gaza that is believed to have killed more than a dozen people, including women and children. The strike creating a crater-sized damage, a hole of sorts, which you can see right there in those images. The New York Times reporting the possible use of controversial 2,000-pound bombs known to cause excessive civilian deaths. The Israeli military says it used precise munitions to target 3 senior Hamas militants involved in the October 7th Hamas-led assault on Israel. Hamas has denied its fighters were in the shelter camp that was targeted. The United States, Britain, and Germany now accusing Iran of giving short-range ballistic missiles to Russia to use against Ukraine. The U.S. said to expect new penalties against Iran. Secretary of State Antony Blinken saying Iran ignored warnings that this kind of weapons transfer would be a major escalation.
Russia has now received shipments of these ballistic missiles and will likely use them within weeks in Ukraine.
This comes as Ukraine launched the biggest drone attack on Moscow yet, targeting 8 other Russian regions, and that's according to the Russian Defense Ministry, which said 1 person has died, and most of the drones that were sent out were shot down. Dozens of buildings, however, were damaged. On Capitol Hill, members of the task force investigating the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump have just been given the medical records, including the autopsy report of the shooter. The National Desk's Antral Nashar reports on what they're learning.
It's been nearly 2 months since the attempt on former President Trump's life. And there's still so much we don't know about the shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks, including his motive.
None of us are looking at it as we have to get a quick answer. We're looking at we have to get the right answer.
Republican Congressman Mike Kelly, whose district includes the site of the shooting, leads the House task force investigating what happened, members of which just received the coroner's report for Crooks, his autopsy report, and toxicology report, including pictures, as well as all documents about how his body was recovered from this roof and released to his family. Kelly told Punchbowl News, "I don't know that it's revealing in any sort of way because you're not going to find out much about his past or what was his thinking the day he did all that." Some Republicans are upset with the FBI for releasing Crooks's body to his family, going as far as accusing the Bureau of obstructing their investigation. Kevin Rojek, special agent in charge of the FBI Pittsburgh field office, said, "I want to stress that it is not standard procedure or practice for the FBI or any law enforcement agency to request that the coroner or medical examiner maintain indefinite custody of a deceased subject's body once the investigative purposes of our agency and our partner agencies are completed." Former Secret Service Special Agent Rich Staropoli says the body should have been held longer to conduct additional tests.
Without that body being there, there's a lot of follow-up leads that could have been followed up on that we've lost. I also want to know, were any explosives found under his fingernails, on his skin, in his hair? What else was he experimenting with?
Another lingering question, if police alerted the Secret Service about Crooks looking suspicious, why wasn't he arrested before he started shooting? Former First Lady Melania Trump just made a rare public statement about this.
There is definitely more to this story, and we need to uncover the truth.
The public may soon get some answers and learn more about what's in those medical reports. Congressman Kelly says in 2 weeks, he hopes to have the task force's first public hearing. On Capitol Hill, I'm Atral Nashar.
Atra, thank you. Well, a bipartisan group of 42 state attorneys general have come together to demand that Congress requires a Surgeon General warning label for social media platforms. Over the summer, Surgeon General Vivek Murthy called the mental health crisis stemming from the use of social media a generational crisis. These state attorneys believe this warning is necessary to lessen the harmful impacts on America's youth. CTE, the devastating brain disease caused by hits to the head, has changed the face of football. While progress is being made to better understand it, CTE still cannot be confirmed until after death. But as national investigative correspondent Dwayne Pullman reveals, researchers are finally getting close to diagnosing and potentially treating CTE while victims are still alive.
Was this your soulmate?
Definitely.
For Sue, a blind date 56 years ago with a football star at Dartmouth named Jack Heidbrink led to a lifelong love. He proposed to you right away?
On our first date, yes.
Jack and Sue married and had 2 girls. Jack became a teacher and football coach.
He was a role model for everyone.
But in 2014, things began to change.
He would forget where he was going.
A disturbing diagnosis followed.
Every doctor told us it was Alzheimer's.
In November of 2022, Jack's family gathered to celebrate his 80th birthday.
Go. Ready?
3 months later, Jack passed away. His family donated his brain to the Unite Brain Bank. What doctors discovered here stunned Jack's family.
He had full-blown CTE.
CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a degenerative disease caused by hits to the head. It's changed the game of football and our understanding of the risk of head trauma. Jack's CTE was stage 4, the most severe. Do you believe that it was tied to football?
Definitely.
While there's no way of knowing for sure, Jack's symptoms were on full display for years.
Speaking with the families is crucial.
Dr. Jesse Mez, co-director of clinical research at the CTE Center at Boston University, began to zero in on behavior to determine whether CTE, which can only be confirmed right now by dissecting the brain, could be diagnosed before death. For that, he turned to the families.
We got together and said, this can only help.
Jack's family agreed to fill out questions about his behavior. Their answers, along with those from hundreds of other families, led to this comprehensive report by Dr. Mez and his team, revealing unique behaviors by people with CTE, including
being impulsive, having a short fuse, kind of flying off the handle.
More pronounced than in Alzheimer's patients. Identifying these behaviors and combining them with neuropsychological testing and MRI images, Dr. Mez says, could lead to a breakthrough, diagnosing and treating CTE.
Knowing the pathology is crucial for designing research studies to treat CTE in the future.
Did I hear you correctly? Treating CTE?
Of course. I mean, that's the goal.
For Jack's family, helping achieve that goal is perhaps the most fitting legacy for a husband, father, and extraordinary man.
Helping matters. It gets everyone to the next level.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Dwayne Pullman.
Thank you, Dwayne, so much for that report. And coming up, how leaders in an Ohio city are responding to a surge in migrants that's overwhelming their resources. Stay with us. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin in one Ohio city overwhelmed by an influx of migrants.
We've been tracking the numbers. About a month ago, we spoke to the mayor of Springfield, Rob Rue. He told us then that the city has an official population of around 60,000. Rue says there could be as many as 20,000 immigrants who have moved to Springfield on top of that number. And as a result, he says it's put a strain on city services. When I spoke with AG Yost Monday, he reiterated that migrants coming to the community are not the problem. However, he says the influx over a short period of time has become an issue. Yost says he's working on a solution, and when I asked exactly what that solution was.
So I've got a couple of ideas, and I'm not ready to talk about them because things tend to get out ahead of reality.
Neighbors say scenes like this constantly play out along Aurora Avenue, where prostitution has a long history.
If you watch outdoor in the daytime, you can see it, like back and forth, like all day.
But the illegal sex trade leaves a lot of people feeling unsafe in the area, and some actively steer clear.
It should not be like right in the middle of the street. Sometimes I've gone here for years with my kids, and, they're out there practically naked.
Seattle City Council member Kathy Moore is calling for a ban on prostitution-related loitering along the Aurora corridor. People who are cited and returned could be immediately rearrested.
Prop 103, which was passed by voters in 1988, allowed insurance companies to choose where to write policies and their rates, which would then be reviewed by the Department of Insurance. But that didn't come with a requirement for insurers to actually write more policies. And in recent years, 3 insurers covering 40% of California homes have either paused new policies or set strict caps. Soller says this needs to change.
The critical things that we're doing this year is, for the first time in California history, insurance companies are agreeing that they're going to take on higher risk homes. And that means the homes that are up, by Shaver Lake, the homes that are, in the hills, that are really outside of the urban core, because that's where some of the biggest problems are happening.
Coming up, 4 astronauts embarking on a unique mission in space. When we come back, the history they're getting ready to make. And it finally happened. The daring Polaris Dawn mission lifted off early this morning from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. A 4-person civilian crew, including billionaire Jared Isaacman, took the Dragon capsule on a mission to make history on a 5-day excursion. The space flight is expected to be the highest any human has flown since the Apollo program. While orbiting at a lower altitude, the crew will also attempt to conduct the first ever private spacewalk. The launch had been postponed several times due to a helium issue and weather. And now we're just all eyeing that hopeful, safe return in a few days. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. Have a wonderful night.